Welcome to the You Can Mentor podcast. This is Zach, and I'm with John. Say hi, John.
Hey, everybody.
John B, baby. He's back.
So glad to be back.
He is in a sassy mood today.
Yeah.
You are angsty.
It's a little warm outside, and I'm drinking coffee. It's just heat on heat, man. White heat.
White heat, that's right. Here at the You Can Mentor podcast. Hey, guys, I'm serious. I'm getting a little sad here because I know I've asked y'all to give us a podcast rating before, and no one seems to be doing it.
That's not been happening?
It has not been happening. And currently we sit at 90 podcast reviews on Apple Podcasts. We have 19 on Spotify, and I want to see 100 on Apple and at least 30 on Spotify by the end of 2024, the year of our Lord.
I think that's a really realistic goal.
I do too.
And certainly people can do that.
Guys, help us out.
Yeah.
Come on, please.
So
please,
it's such a little thing to ask.
It's just so small. Okay. Last little plug. Go to our website. Find us on social media at You Can Mentor, at Middleman.
That's right. Middleman-ministries.org.
Yeah, sure. That's great. But hey, check out our stuff. We've got learning labs. You can sign up for that. We have the National Mentoring Gathering. You can sign up for that. Anything to help Christian mentors thrive, we got.
Lots of resources. It really
Lots
is laid
of
out,
stuff.
and it's very user-friendly.
Well, thank you. But today we're talking about, John's got a story.
Yeah, man. I think I might just want to even begin the conversation by asking you, what's your experience been with motorcycles?
Well, John, I don't like them.
Okay.
That's my take.
So you have an attitude about them or opinion.
Yeah, because I'm huge. I'm a giant.
Oh, yeah.
I can't fit on a motorcycle. Have
So
you seen me?
If you sit on a motorcycle, will your feet drag?
Probably.
Okay.
It's kind of like going to Six Flags and riding on a ride where your legs dangle. Terrifies me.
Okay.
That's how I feel about a motorcycle.
I think being a normal sized man, I've had a little bit of a different experience. So I like them. Something you might should know, and I think our listeners who are also motorcycle enthusiasts, I think they would agree with me that the experience is really satisfying because you know what you can do. You kind of get to be. There's a lot of great things about it, but what I really love about it is, and Silas is going to back me up on this as well. You get to really enjoy the environment. Meaning that instead of the windshield and the fake air that you're breathing from your air conditioner, you are breathing fresh air, and you're actually like, you're riding by a restaurant and you can smell the restaurant. You can ride by some flowers and smell the flowers. Sometimes you actually get like currents of different feeling air as well in terms of warmth. It's like when you're swimming and you feel a warm current. Like when we're swimming and you start to feel a warm current come through the water.
Then that means someone just peed in the water.
It could, but if you would just see it as a more of a pure, beautiful thing, you realize that's neat.
Okay, audience, let's hit pause here. There's a couple of things that y'all need to know. Okay, first off, John loves motorcycles, and he thinks everyone else does too. And John, I'm sitting here today, and I want to make a bet with you. I bet no one who's listening to this podcast rides a motorcycle.
I love that you went ahead and put that challenge out there.
If you ride a motorcycle and listen to the You Can Mentor podcast, send me an email at zach@youcanmentor.com, Z-A-C-H, and I will give you a $10 gift card to Chick-fil-A. And John, I will give you
a mug?
A You Can Mentor coffee mug.
Oh my goodness.
Which we're drinking out of today for the first time. If you're watching on YouTube,
these
you
are
can see
wonderful
it.
mugs, by
and
the
we're
way.
really jazzed about it. But yeah, so
Thank you for that.
If you like mentoring and ride a motorcycle, send me an email because I don't believe anyone does.
Okay.
Except for you.
Well, and you people who have a negative opinion about motorcycles, just bear with me because what we're calling this episode today is the motorcycle metaphor.
Let me tell y'all how this happened. Okay. So John and I are buddies and we like hanging out together.
Yeah. No, we're good. We're good on time. It's fine.
And John and I have been trying to figure out what our next podcast will be about. And John called me the other morning and he said, "Hey, I've got this idea." And I said, it's about motorcycles. I don't know if anyone's going to like it. I don't know if it's going to hit, if it's going to relate. But guys, John did a bang up job. And I do believe that John is going to somehow play the motorcycle metaphor into helping us all become better mentors today. So John, take it away.
All right, man, here we go. So with my kids, obviously I'm not going to be putting them on a motorcycle. So as soon as they were able to, as soon as they were old enough, you know what I did? I would have a series of different cars and different things and motorcycles and such. But when they were little, I would ride these little Honda scooters from the 80s. They were called Elite 80s. And what's great about a scooter, as you know, right?
Yeah.
You can put your little one like right there in your lap. And you can kind of hold them as you ride, and they're also very quiet, and so you can kind of communicate. So some of my earliest memories with my kids, as they began to enjoy motorsport, right, was them being able to sit with Dad, and then when they get old enough, I have them sit behind me, and then they kind of aged out of that, and then they would ride four-wheelers and little scooters around themselves. So they've kind of always enjoyed that. Well, so my son became of the age, he's now 18 years old, and he's a pretty competent rider. So he rides dirt bikes and such, and some street bikes. But we've never, before just last week, gone on a ride together. So when I say go on a ride together, I don't mean my son riding on the same motorcycle with me. I mean, I'm on a motorcycle and my 18-year-old's on another motorcycle. You got that mental image?
Yes.
Okay. So as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, dude, there is just such like rich mentoring metaphor in this experience. And so that, my friend, is what I wanted to kind of talk about, share with you a little bit. So are you ready for some of the truths that we can pull from that experience?
John, I would like nothing more than for you to tell me the truths about mentoring that you received by riding a motorcycle.
Okay, well, here we go. Number one, communication is key, all right? And that is to share with you that I noticed that this day, and by the way, I live in Waco, Texas.
That's right, baby.
And we have Cameron Park. You've enjoyed Cameron Park before?
I have. It's beautiful.
It really is a beautiful park. It's right next to the Brazos River. And there's a really wonderful winding roadway right through it from the south side to the north side. And so my son and I rode downtown by the bridge and then up through Cameron Park and then back again. Okay, wonderful ride, very short, safe, a lot of fun. But I realized that it was important for me to be able to communicate with Levi before we even set out, to tell him what to expect. I also realized that as we're riding, I would want to communicate something to him. And obviously there are some difficulties there, right? In terms of being able to communicate while moving as we're keeping our eyes on the road and such. And then afterward, there was a real debriefing kind of opportunity as well, right? Because again, this was his first time to kind of ride with another rider, and he's riding behind me and off to the side there. And I had to anticipate what situations might occur while we're riding, based on where we were going, and then really speak into those scenarios about what we would do in case something would happen.
So, as a mentor, when your mentee is experiencing something new, something that you are challenging them with, it is so vital that we communicate with them before we even get in that situation, during the situation, and then afterwards we debrief with them. Mm-hmm. It is our job as a mentor to think ahead, kind of get some vision on situations that might pop up. Hey, this might happen. You might expect this. If this happens, do this. If this happens, do that. And that is how we are going to truly live life with our mentees and teach them how to excel and how to grow in situations that they might not be familiar with.
Absolutely. I think that we rise and fall on communication as mentors.
Oh, it's so important.
When you think about it, the mistakes that you're going to make is when you say something or don't say something, but that may get processed in the wrong way by our mentee, and then you have to kind of come back because maybe, again, it turns into a situation. And so being able to communicate well, I think is so important. I often say it doesn't matter what you meant. It really matters what was heard, right? What was perceived, because our intention doesn't, sometimes our intention lines up perfectly with what we say, and sometimes it doesn't.
And I think for me as a mentor, please don't get me wrong. When you're hanging out with your mentee, when you are taking them on new experiences, that's amazing. Like you're an A mentor. If you want to be an A+ mentor, we have to be intentional with these conversations. Especially for me, it's the debrief. I always forget to debrief. Mm-hmm. But there's so much gold in, hey, this is about to happen. Let's talk about it. How are you feeling? This might happen. How would you handle that? And then during the experience, you're right there with them and you're encouraging them and you're watching them and you're smiling and you are just supporting them. You're championing them. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, you're talking about, hey, how did it make you feel when this happened? Tell me what was going through your head whenever this happened, and so on.
Yeah.
It's simple, but man, it is so important if you want to really maximize the engagement with your mentee.
Absolutely. And this kind of applies to whether it's your weekly meeting and just in conversation, but also some of those kind of special events that you might have. Let's say you might be on a camping trip with your mentee or something else that you just kind of have like a real learning experience. Again, that's why it's a good, powerful thing. And also a really great thing about that kind of debrief time, let me just say this, is that it's so important that it be just saturated in encouragement, right? Mm-hmm. Even sometimes if we have to be critical, we always want to be overall very encouraging. So yes. Scripturally speaking, when it comes to our words, just real quick, Proverbs 16:24 says, gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. Matthew 12, Jesus says, I tell you that every careless word that people speak, they shall give an accounting for in the day of judgment. So our words matter, right? We know that they have power. We want to communicate just as effectively as we can in all situations.
All right, so point number 1, communication is key. Let's talk about what your next point is on this motorcycle joyride of yours, John.
I'm going to call it this: Superpower Observation. Okay, I'm talking about like spidey sense is tingling kind of thing. This is something that I can tell you I wasn't prepared for. I wasn't thinking it would happen as it did. Now, when I ride, I will say this: I do love riding motorcycles. I think that riding motorcycles in this day and age is very, very dangerous because of the distraction level, right? We have so many that are on their phones even as they're behind the wheel, and we have all these enormous screens in our car that are communicating with us constantly. So when it comes to riding, you really have to be so aware of what's going on. Well, what I discovered was, in this scenario, which was brand new to me too, so even though it was Levi's first ride, it was my first ride with someone that was just completely dependent on my leadership.
Let me ask you this. Were you more focused on yourself or on him?
Well, that's the thing. There had to be this balance. Like there really did, because when you ride, again, you're thinking about everything around you. I have a mode of doing this, whether I'm driving some old car, which we drive a lot of old clunkers, that brakes go out, things like that, or on a motorcycle when, again, it can be a real life or death situation. So again, listener who rides motorcycles who's going to email Zach later, you can agree with me on this. It's serious, okay? But so I've kind of got my like boundaries of how safe I feel, how close I am to another vehicle. And now, then in my rear view, to my right here, I've got my son, and now I'm aware of his boundaries as well. And I'm also aware of how close he is to me, you see? So I've kind of got all these buffers to be responsible for. Not only am I watching the horizon, looking left and right, and again, the thing about riding is you kind of anticipate the worst possible scenario in all things. So it doesn't mean that you're a total pessimist, but you have to think, if something happens, if the worst possible thing that can happen based on all these other drivers out here, I've got to be ready to act quickly. And so with that, I found myself just kind of having this awareness like nothing, like I've never really had on a bike before, all because I realized what was at stake here.
So tell me how that plays into a mentor-mentee relationship.
So I would put it this way. I think it's really important that we as mentors, we see clearly and we process quickly, okay? So this is an interesting thing. It's truly something that I love about our faith, because it's something that the Lord tells us that we can ask for him or ask from him for us. In all relationships that we have, right? Discernment is so important. The ability to make a decision, but also that ability to see an issue for what it is, right? It's kind of like reading between the lines. When we think about, let's just take a mentor-mentee kind of situation when you're having that conversation, during your time at school there or your after-school program or whatever it is, and you're and you hear what they're saying in terms of how they're answering, how their day's going, but you just get a feeling like there's something else going on. And that is that discernment to say, something doesn't quite sound right. Let me maybe dig a little deeper, or let me maybe ask a question. Let me show my mentee that they can trust me in that situation. And then sometimes it kind of takes a little bit of conversation for them to feel a little more comfortable with maybe sharing that maybe not everything is perfectly fine, but there is something that they would like to talk about.
There's so much power in being able to look past our mentees' words. Mm-hmm. And watching their nonverbals, watching how they carry themselves, watching how they answer, and just be like, and that's where the Holy Spirit can come in. Holy Spirit, is there anything that this mentee is struggling with? Is there anything that they're hiding? How can I best love them? How can I best comfort them? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really important aspect of mentoring, is being observant.
Yeah.
Right? And you are the adult, and sometimes you can pull things out of your mentee that they might not even be aware of. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just like whenever you are on the motorcycle, you can look out for your son, and because he might not know what to look for.
Exactly right. Yeah. I mean, it is that open the eyes of my heart kind of thing, right? Please don't start singing right now.
Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. All right, sorry.
So Psalm 119 says this: teach me good judgment, wise and right discernment and knowledge, for I have believed your commandments. I am your servant. Give me discernment. What a wonderful thing. It's such a Solomon thing to ask for. Like, what could we really use from the Lord? Man, we could use discernment, that ability to see a situation for what it really is, and to be able to act quickly, and say the thing that needs to be said, or do the thing that needs to be done.
And I think in both these, being intentional is huge. Being intentional about communicating, mm-hmm. being intentional about observing, like you are on the lookout, and you're going to use specific words to help this mentee reach their full potential.
Yeah,
to help them understand what's going on, to help them understand how to grow, to help them understand what the Lord is up to.
And it's like you said, preparation is really important with that. So intentionality begins with being prepared. It means not just kind of reacting to something that happens, but instead anticipating. And again, it's the old simple thing of like going to the Lord before your time with your mentee and say, Father, just allow me to hear what you want me to hear, say what you want me to say. Yeah.
It can be so hard to get your mind right before you hang out with your mentee, because you've got so much on your mind: work, family, finances, schedule, all of those things. But there's so much power in just taking a second and just being like, okay, Lord, I'm going to clear my mind. Lord, help me focus on my mentee, that they're the most important person during this moment.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. So Romans 12 also says, do not conform yourself to this age, that you may discern what is the will of God. So that's an interesting component too, that we're not just looking so that we can be observant, or so that we can have the supernatural power to speak wisdom, or to see clearly, but instead it does go back to we truly want to know what the will of God is for ourselves and for our mentee.
All right, John, the last one, you told me earlier, learned habits.
That's right.
Tell me more about that, my friend.
So here's the thing that I, about halfway through our ride, as we're sitting at a light, and I'm just sitting on the bike in a certain way with my hands in a certain way. So you've got your hands on the handlebars, and then when you sit down, sometimes you just kind of want to rest or move your body a little bit. So I found that I was sitting in a certain style, and then I looked over at my son, and he was kind of sitting in the same posture. And so I thought, interestingly enough, right? Like, that's a very human thing to do. I don't know if you've ever kind of been in a social situation with someone. Have you ever been standing there, maybe talking to someone, and it seems like you almost kind of mimic they mimic your posture? You ever had that?
John, my entire life has been based around trying to mimic you. I just want to be like you.
You can't be any shorter than you are. You know this, right? You can't make yourself shorter.
But the beard.
Oh, that's right. We haven't really gotten into the facial hair situation.
It's because I can't grow any.
Yet, my friend.
All right, continue.
So this idea of learned habits, though, whether we were moving as we're riding or we're sitting at a light, how I'm reacting to the environment and to other drivers as well. It reminded me the importance of not just what I tell my son before we ride, not just what we talk about, or I'm communicating with him specifically, or even after that debrief, but it's so important that everything that I'm doing, that it is something that I would want to see duplicated in his riding as well, right? Like keeping his head up, like looking and like communicating well, using his blinker, all those kind of things. Not even not getting my phone out. Like sometimes I found myself wanting to do, like I would in a driving situation, just because we're going to be there a while. But really understanding that the habits that I would want him to pick up are the ones that I need to not just talk about, but obviously model.
So, in other words, they're going to do what you do.
Yes. And the bummer is sometimes we're just not aware of those times because is it fair to say, like, sometimes we know that we're on, right? And then other times we don't think about it as much. And I do think that it's so important for us to know that with our mentees, we're always on. They are always watching.
They are always watching. So, a couple of weeks ago, I was at a party. I told some of my mentees, I said, hey, you guys stop by and say hi. I didn't think that they would, and they did. And I mean, it's not like I'm like going crazy or anything like that, but how I acted at a party with all my good friends is different than how we act whenever we meet, on a Friday morning. And I had to remind myself, okay, they're watching. They're watching everything I do. They're watching how I respond. They're watching how I joke. They're watching what I drink. They are watching everything. And just know, as a mentor, even if it looks like your mentee's not watching, they are. Mm-hmm. And what you do is going to give them permission to do whatever it is that you're doing.
Yep.
And so we just have to be really, really careful about that. For me, especially with like sarcasm or making jokes or things like that. Like I have a son who's 8, and I have found he's pretty sarcastic. And I'm like, dude, where'd that come from? And then I pay attention to myself and how I talk. I'm like, oh, that's where it came from. He's just imitating me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would say this as well. It is so important that we watch ourselves, that we are careful to not make a mistake, to not slip up, to not say something we shouldn't have said or do something that we shouldn't do. However, to this point, I want to also say something that's really important about this matter is that there will be times when we make that mistake. And I think that's one of the most important things about this point is that when we do make that mistake, that we are good about going to our mentee, whether it's something that we have to apologize for or at least maybe speak into. I think that our mentees learn so much more about us when when there is that kind of conflict resolution, as opposed to, wow, this guy never makes a mistake, because we do, you know what I mean?
I think sometimes the best learning opportunities can be our failures.
Yeah, exactly.
And
right.
so, man, that's spot on. It's okay to mess up.
Yes.
Just talk about it.
Because it gives them the freedom to realize I can be a human being.
Right.
But it also shows such a great way to say, hey, when you do mess up, own it, and work to resolve that. I think that there's so much wisdom there. 1 Corinthians says this, simply put, as Paul says, do as I do, for I am doing as Christ did.
Man, John, you're just dropping some Bible knowledge today.
I want to bring the word, dude. All right?
The word is important.
Listen, ultimately, we are always pointing to Christ, right? In all things that we do and say. So communicate, observe and discern, and emulate Christ.
That's right, baby.
Do you know something interesting about the word emulate?
Please tell me.
How would you define it?
Emulate?
Yeah, emulate Christ, if I say that.
To mimic, to follow, to be like.
Exactly right. Something interesting about the word, however, is that not only is it to say follow or replicate, but actually emulate can mean to go beyond as well.
Whoa.
And that's really interesting because we want to be careful here, theologically speaking, Zach. I don't want to put something in your head that's wrong. However, did Christ not say, you'll do even more? You'll do even greater?
Yeah. That's a crazy
Isn't
statement.
that great?
Yeah, I don't.
You don't feel comfortable with it? Or?
I'm just like, what?
Yeah,
All right.
that's hard.
All right, so John learned some things on his little motorcycle trip with his son. For those of you guys who don't know, John has a daughter who's how old?
I have a 20-year-old and a 12-year-old.
And an 18-year-old.
And right in the middle there, I've got my 18-year-old son, yes.
So John is, he's been doing youth ministry for 30 years.
Yeah.
He's got, this guy's been around the block a couple times.
I'm old.
You guys, if you want to see John's gray beard, check out the YouTube channel. We have 3 subscribers. You could be number 4.
Maybe we should put I had someone take a photo of that day with me and Levi
Oh,
on
cool.
our motorcycles.
Yeah, let's
Maybe
put it
we can
up.
put that on the Instagram.
The old show notes or something.
Yeah.
All right, that's all we got today, guys. But John's dropping knowledge on the motorcycle metaphor. I think it was good, John. I'm very, very happy that you shared it with us today.
Oh, good.
As always, it's just been a joy to be with you.
It is fun.
All right, mentor, listener, podcast watcher, all 3 of y'all maybe, and my mom. What's up, Mom? If you missed all this stuff, you missed some good stuff, please share this with your team, share it with your volunteers. We want everything that we do to help you become the best mentor possible. We want to see you thrive. So check us out, Instagram, website, all that stuff. And if you missed it all, remember this.
You can mentor.
That's right.
Let's click like at the end. We'll click.
Oh, yeah. You can mentor.
You can mentor.
That was us banging our You Can Mentor coffee mugs together. Until next time.